Welcome to the Success Talk Show, the podcast for ambitious leaders who want to get their best results and create a workplace for their teams to thrive. Each week, we share practical advice to help you accelerate your success and grow as an inspiring leader. Now, here's your host, Leadership Success Coach, Donna Sirianni.
Welcome to another episode of the Success Talk Show. This is Donna Sirianni, Leadership Success Coach and founder of Success Compass Academy. This is the third part of a three-part series, so I encourage you to go back and listen to the first two episodes if you missed them. And the reason I'm focusing in this series on employee engagement is because if you're seen as a leader who knows how to drive employee engagement, you become sought after because you know how to attract top talent. People are clamoring to work for you. Your best employees love working for you. You maybe don't have any turnover. And when your employees are giving their best effort, you and your team are consistently getting outstanding results. And with such a successful track record, the organization wants to give you even more responsibility, more teams to manage, and juicier assignments. So, by developing your muscles around driving engagement, you're not only getting your best results, but you're also setting yourself apart as an effective and successful leader. So, again, if you missed the first two parts in the series, please go back and listen to them because there's some really critical information that will give you a great foundation around coaching, managing performance, recognition in the workplace, and some other fundamentals that are really important. You don't want to skip over them. Actually, I'm going to go over two strategies in this session to wrap up the series. But before I do, in case this is the first time you're listening to my podcast, I want to just take a minute to introduce myself. I've spent my entire career in technology, started off as a programmer out of college, worked my way up to manage projects, then senior leadership roles in technology organization, managing teams across the US, Europe, and Asia. Now, my last corporate role was as Chief People Officer for a software company, and as much as I loved championing a fantastic company culture and winning a Best Place to Work award, I was drawn to leave my corporate role behind to become a full-time coach and consultant. So now in those roles, I help leaders in technology accelerate growth, both for themselves personally and for their organizations, while creating a workplace for their teams to thrive. So this topic of employee engagement is near and dear to my heart. And in this three-part series, I'm sharing with you precisely the strategies that I used to achieve such fantastic results. And many of these strategies, they're simple, they're straightforward, and you can start implementing them right after you finish the podcast. So nothing here I'm sharing is, rocket science, but I'm going to lay out a couple of new strategies for you. So I'm going to dig in. There's two strategies. One is around a talent review process, and the second one is around training. Now let's start with the talent review process. Now, first I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I stumbled across this process that was really a game changer. When I was Chief People Officer working for the CEO, he wanted to put in place a succession plan, both for himself and for the C-level executives. And what I did as Chief People Officer is I researched what would be the best approach we could take. What are the best practices around this? And what could I implement? And I actually took it a step further because I stumbled across a process that was really brilliant. It served us so well in so many areas. And the talent review process, which I'm going to dig into in a minute, it really allowed us to look at not just the C-level, but all the direct reports, and then all the teams underneath. So every employee in the entire company ended up being reviewed as part of this talent review process. Who are our high potentials? Where are solid performers? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Do we have any potential flight risk? Who do we need to make sure we hold on to and develop? If any of our key leaders were to leave, who might fill their shoes? It was a very comprehensive process and pretty straightforward. And I have since used this process with several organizations as a consultant. And again, it's very straightforward and yields a lot of great information. So what I'm going to do right now is break it down into a couple of steps that you can get started with. Now, the first step is I want to ask you, have you ever seen the 9-box grid? In the 9-box grid, you identify every member of your team, whether they're high potential, and they could be either, high, solid, or low potential, and then performance. Are they a high performer, a solid performer, or a low performer? And basically you end up with a 9-box grid. Now, if you've never seen it, feel free to go to my website, donnasirianni.com, click on the resources tab, and then download the one-page PDF for the 9-box grid so you can take a look at what that looks like. Now, for every member of your team, let's say you've got 10 people working for you. You're basically going to ask the question for each person on your team, are they high, solid, or low performer? The next question you can ask yourself is, are they a high, solid, or low potential performer, right? What's their potential? So you may have somebody who's high potential, high performer, right? That individual, say out of 10 people, let's say you've got one person on your team who fits that, would be in that box. High potential, high performer. This is somebody who you probably are thinking about promoting. You're positioning them for their next career move within your team. They're ambitious, they're self-starter, they're motivated, and you really can see they've got great potential. This is an individual that you certainly don't want to lose. You want to make sure that this individual wants to stay with your team, but of course you want to support their career growth, so you're not going to hold them back. But this is somebody you obviously want to, make a further investment in. Now, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, let's say out of 10 people, you've got somebody who, well, unfortunately, they're a low performer and they've got low potential. Maybe they're just not in the right job. Their strengths and weaknesses really don't fit with the position they're in on your team. So that when you finish evaluating each member of your team and you see where everybody fits on this grid, if you've got somebody in that low performer, low potential box, it's really incumbent on you to take some action. We can talk about that later in the podcast, but you need to address it because maybe that person is struggling. They're not in the right role. It may be creating a lot of stress for them. It may be creating stress for you and the team because they're not pulling their weight. So you obviously need to have a coaching conversation with them. What's the best next step with that individual? What would be a role that would be a good fit for them? And it's possible that you may need to take some actions with HR to help that individual find a better role. And perhaps they need to do that at another company. It may not even be within your organization. But this exercise is about identifying first the strengths and weaknesses at a high level and understanding for the talent that you have, where do you have strengths and weaknesses as a team? Okay, so once you finish that 9-box grid, the next step you're going to take is you're going to look to see what actions do you need to take for each individual. Now, let me tell you a quick story. When I first did this exercise the very first time, there was one executive that I sat with, and she had a high potential, high performer who she said she would like to promote in several months. And my question to her was, what is holding you back from promoting this individual now? If you're worried that there's potential flight risk, that maybe this fantastic individual who is himself a leader, if you're worried about him leaving the organization, why would you wait 8 or 9 months to give him the promotion that he's been hoping for a few years? Like, why would you keep waiting? What's the purpose there? And she looked at me and she said, you're absolutely right. And I said, let's do it. If you want to promote him, and this is a clear action that you can take, let's process it right away, which we did. And he was a phenomenal leader in the organization. And anyway, that ended up working out beautifully. Now, I realize in some organizations, doing promotions is on a cycle. There's a process you have to follow. You can't do them on a moment's notice. I guess I had the luxury. I was chief people officer. So I had the luxury at that time of saying, hey, let's do it. We've got a strong argument for it. However, you still need to look at what you have within your power to do to encourage, promote, support, and strengthen those individuals so that they don't feel unappreciated. There's no future here. Nobody seems to care about me. I'm going to go somewhere else where I can really get ahead, right? You don't want to lose those high or solid performers, okay? So anyway, first step is you're going to use the 9-box grid. Now, honestly, you know in your gut, you work with your team day in and day out. You know your team members very, very well. So this part of the exercise probably takes less than 30 minutes for you to identify where somebody falls on the grid, okay? Now, let's take the next step. The next tool, and you can go and download this on my site, but the next tool is called a talent review template. Talent review template. Just an Excel spreadsheet. Very simple. You can go to my website, again, donnasirianni.com, go to the resources tab, download the talent review template. It's just a simple Excel spreadsheet. Now, what you're going to do is, let's say you've got 10 people on your team or 10 direct reports. You're just going to fill out every row and column as I've laid out the template, the employee name, their job title, and you're going to list what's their performance and potential, right? They're either high performer, high potential, they may be solid performer, solid potential, whatever it is. And the question you're going to ask yourself for each individual is, what is the vacancy risk and impact if they left? So let's go back to my story of there was somebody who he was a director and wanted to become a VP. His vacancy risk at the time, I'd say high. And the impact if he left, I'd say it was high. So if you've got somebody who's high potential, high performer, who's at a high risk of leaving the organization, and if he left, it would make a big impact, then obviously that's a situation you've just now flagged. That's something you want to pay attention to, right? You don't want to lose those people. The next question you're going to answer for each person is, what's their next likely move? If they stay with your team, they stay with the organization, where do you see them going? What's the next bump up? And that's something for you to think about. Now, you're not going to share this template. Once you fill it out, this is your tool, your confidential tool that you're going to have in your back pocket. Think of it as a budget, except it's for your people, and you're going to use it to guide some conversations, some decisions, and some actions. It's giving you a thumbnail sketch of the talent that you're responsible for. And this little Excel spreadsheet is something you just keep in your back pocket, and I'll share with you in a minute how you can use it. But you're not actually publishing it. You're not giving it to HR. You're certainly not revealing the contents to anyone unless you decide that you've got a close set of leaders to share information with and make it confidential. That's up to you. But this is a tool just for you. Now, the next two columns are simply the strengths and development areas. So what's top of mind about each individual? What are their strengths? Are they hardworking, good judgment, reliable, dependable? They're seen as a trusted advisor by their clients, really good at sales, or they're a subject matter expert. They care about the quality and they deliver high quality services. What are their strengths? And you're just writing what's top of mind, and it's probably less than a paragraph. It's just some bullet points. You're not writing a review. This is for you, okay? You're the audience, but capture their strengths. Now, in the development areas section, what comes to mind immediately about what they need to do to improve, to either address some things that you feel they aren't doing well enough, and secondly, development areas to get to that next likely move. So for example, if you see that somebody to get from manager to director, maybe there's no performance issues, they're very good, they're a solid performer, but you see that they need to be able to communicate in stressful situations more effectively with clients, perhaps client presentations. That could be a development area, but list the couple of things that you know they need development in order to get that promotion to the next level. What will hold them back? If they don't get this development area, if they don't get this under their belt, they won't get to that next level. What is it? And be really honest with yourself around what do you need to see them deliver or perform so that they can actually advance. Okay, so that's it. There's just 5 or 6 pieces of key information. Let's say hypothetically you had 10 people. You should be able to fill out that Excel spreadsheet in less than an hour. And I say that because I've done this with dozens of people, with entire organizations and companies, and I've never had a talent review go over an hour. Usually I sit there with the laptop, I question you, we fill it out, I interview you, I'm filling it out as you're talking, and at the end of an hour, it doesn't even take that long, at the end of an hour, you've got that talent review template completed and it's ready for you to use it. Okay, so I know I went through that quickly, but you'll see it's not rocket science. Now the value is, let's say you as a leader go through these 2 exercises, which for you will take about an hour. For each of your direct reports, it could take an hour. So in the course of a week or 2 weeks, you could have this done for your organization. The beauty, if you decide to combine it into one larger file and you sort it, and you can sort it different ways. You could sort it by performance and potential. That way, let's say I've got a client who has 400 people in his organization. Engagement is at the top of his list of priorities. If he were to complete this assignment, he'd have an Excel spreadsheet with 400 names. He can sort it and see who are my high performer, high potential in the organization across 400. Those names would bubble up to the top of the list. Or you could sort it by vacancy risk and impact. Where are those risks? Of everybody in your organization, who do your leaders think might be considering moving outside the company? And what you want to do in that case is ask the question, like I did with that executive, are these individuals, assuming there's more than one, is there anybody on this list? Let's take the names one by one. What could you do to keep them motivated to stay, to ensure that you don't lose them to the competition? What actions could you take? What are the reasons why they might be looking? Is it that they are looking for promotion, more money, relocation, work from home, more training, some more challenging assignments? What is it they're looking for that you might be able to give them that will motivate them to stay? What actions could you take? Now, this is so important because too often what I've seen is managers or leaders ignoring the red flags, and then when it's too late and the person gives their notice, they're disappointed, like, oh, I can't believe John is leaving, or I can't believe Sarah's given her notice. We're going to miss them. This is terrible. Well, were there red flags along the way that you sort of chose to ignore? Sarah has asked for a raise for 2 years, still hasn't gotten one, or she's asked for more challenging assignments or more responsibility, and you keep telling her to, hang in there. I mean, people will only wait for so long before they'll take action. So it's easy to ignore it, but if you really want to be that proactive, effective, successful leader, I'm asking you to do some analysis of the data that you have in your hands. That's all the mechanics around the talent review itself. When you take it a step further and look at succession planning, let's take it up a notch. Now, this exercise that I just mentioned, like I said, you could do this in an hour. Each of your direct reports could do it in an hour. You fill out the template, see what decisions you want to make. But once you step back from it, let's say you as a leader need to have a successor. Maybe you have 1 or 2 people in mind on your team. Who could take your place if you got a promotion? Who are you grooming to fill your shoes? Now, let's say you go out on vacation. Who do you leave in charge? If you get a promotion, is that same individual somebody who you feel comfortable could take your place? Right? Do you feel totally comfortable that they could step in? And if not, what are they missing? What are their development areas, that things that they could be working on in their development plan that would equip them to be qualified to take your job if you leave? So that again positions you as an even stronger leader, because that positions you to be proactive, and you actually are creating more bandwidth for yourself if you've got at least 1 or 2 people working for you who can fill your shoes, because now that increases how much that you can delegate to them. Situations where you've maybe got a conflict, there's a client presentation you have to give, but you need somebody to attend a meeting in your shoes, fill your shoes to run a meeting for you. Well, the more you groom your team to do that in your place, the stronger you are as a leader. Right now, you're going to be able to, I won't say multitask, but you're going to be able to leverage the full potential of your team. How that's going to lead to creating engagement and we're going to talk about training in a second, but how that leads to engagement is that those individuals feel you value them, you respect them, you trust them, you're caring for their growth because you're giving them opportunities to be more visible. And simply by ensuring that trust and respect, they feel that closer connection with you that you're investing. Again, if it's in the spirit of this is a step forward for them. Okay. So as far as succession planning, depending on your level in the organization, you may or may not have an obligation to share with HR who your successor is. But this is a plan that you can have on your own that you could determine. Let's say, for example, out of the 10 people, you've got one person who you think would be the best fit as your successor. The questions you want to ask yourself that I mentioned earlier, also think about time frame. Like, how long will it take for this individual to be qualified and a good fit to fill in your shoes? Is it only on an emergency basis, or could they actually apply for the job and get the promotion and do the job? And how far away is that? Do they need a year, 2 years, 3 years before they'd be ready? Sometimes there's a big gap. I know working with many executives on this talent review process, there's often a very large gap between, say, the C-level and the next level of leaders, and then even going down the organization, that sometimes they've set themselves up in such a way they actually need to go outside the company to bring in, new management talent. So you'll be ahead of the game if you can be thinking about this as you hire people, as you work on coaching your own team. Okay, so just a few thoughts there, things for you to think about. Now, that's the talent review process. I really did that pretty quickly, and I didn't want to make it sound complicated. So hopefully, I'm wondering how you're feeling about it. Does that sound like something that you can tackle? Yeah, it sounds pretty straightforward, doesn't it? So the next strategy and the last strategy I want to leave you with is how to leverage, once you complete the talent review template and that process, you've done the 9-box grid, you've filled out the template, and you've got all your employees, you've thought through these questions. The next thing you can do with that is you look down the column for development areas. You can look through that, and there is your wealth of information, wealth of ideas of where you can invest training dollars and training opportunities for your team. So what you could do is see, what are all the areas that are most common that could benefit the most people? So for example, let's say that it's clear that because of the amount of work your team has, many people are feeling overwhelmed. They need some time management training. Maybe because of work with clients, there's an opportunity for everyone to up their game on how to give better presentations. But you may see some trends. And in those development areas, it's going to give you lots of ideas on specific training, topics for training that you could deliver to your team over a period of time. Now, it may be more than you can do in a year, but take those development areas, make a list, and then ask yourself, what are ways you could deliver that training? It could be bring in somebody from the outside, have somebody come in and do external training. And I myself have done hundreds of hours of training for companies on topics that they've uncovered. So it could be somebody like me. It could be an internal expert that maybe what people need, you're seeing a deficiency is that maybe, for example, members of your team need a more in-depth understanding of your products and solutions that your company is delivering to clients, that you've got a gap, a pocket of people who really need to go deeper on your solutions that you're delivering to the market. So maybe you've got an internal expert somewhere else in the company who could do that training. Or maybe there's e-learning. Maybe based on what it is, it would be feasible to leverage some e-learning, some online learning modules, again, depending on what the content is. You may also see the job shadowing. Maybe you've got your high potential, high performer, and maybe when you team them up with somebody who also has solid potential, but, might have a learning curve, where could you have some job shadowing so your employees are learning from each other? So you can get creative on how to deliver training in a number of different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all. But the beauty of this talent review process is that it basically gives you a fantastic list of training topics, and you could sit down with your direct reports, with your team, and list out training topics and work with them on what would be some effective ways to deliver that training. Now, taking it a step further, that's you planning the training and learning opportunities over a period of time. But what I encourage you to do at the very least is once you finish that talent review template and you've made a note for every person on your team what their development area is, what their strengths and development areas are, is to, in your next one-on-one with each person, share with them positive feedback about their strengths and also share with them the 1 to 3 areas where you'd like to see them improve or develop knowledge, develop skills, strengthen abilities, and you can do it in a very encouraging way. And that gets into how you deliver performance feedback. But the purpose is you have now in your mind, let's say you're talking to somebody named, we talked about Sarah, fictitious Sarah. When you sit down with Sarah, you will be doing her a disservice if you don't share with her the 2 or 3 things that you really need for her to improve or develop, or knowledge she needs to gain for her to get to the next level. You don't want to hold back on that. You need to share with her what your thoughts are around, Sarah, you are such an expert on our products. The next thing I really feel would be important for you to get to the next level is to start working on your presentation skills to client audiences. That's really the next thing. Let's work on that. Let's talk about some ideas of how you could get those abilities, right? Because you would be doing your team a disservice if you withhold all this information. You know what they need to do to get ahead, but you're not sharing it with them, right? That would be a sad situation. So aside from planning training, you're going to sit down with each person, and in the next one-on-ones, make sure you have shared with them where you see them being a solid or high performer and where you see development areas, things they can still do to learn and grow. So those are the 2 final strategies that I wanted to share with you. And the 2 strategies are the talent review and expanding training opportunities. Those, I guarantee you from experience, those 2 strategies will help you tackle several critical drivers of engagement. And when I say that, if you didn't listen to the first 2 parts of this series, you can go into my website, go on the resources tab, and download the 12 drivers of engagement. It's a 1-page summary from Gallup. And just to let you know, these 2 strategies we just talked about will allow you to check the box on several of these drivers. And a couple of them are, I know what's expected of me at work. I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. And the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing good work. My manager cares about me as a person. Somebody at work encourages my development. The purpose of my organization makes me feel my job is important. And the last 6 months, somebody at work has talked to me about my progress. This last year, I've had opportunities at work to learn and grow. Now that's like 5 or 6 drivers right there. So you can see that these 2 strategies tick the box on many of them. I always like seeing where 2 for 1, like how can I take one action that's going to help me, in twice as many areas? And certainly these 2 strategies will do that. So I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but as you can see, these could really have a big impact for you. Now, if you want to take the whole idea of the talent review meeting and go much, much deeper and implement something much more thorough, I will tell you that the book that I read that really inspired me was called The Talent Review Meeting Facilitator's Guide by Doris Sims. And you can find that on Amazon. That was a game changer for me. So anyway, it's a fantastic process. Now, kind of stepping back, what I really want to encourage you is to, we've gone through these 3 episodes, is to pick your starting point of the strategies I've shared with you. It isn't really that important which one you do first. It's more important that you just get started. Even if you just spend 1 hour a week thinking about what your next step could be, because all of these strategies are pretty simple to implement, but even in 1 hour a week, you can make tremendous progress. Now, you can always reach out to me if ever you have questions. You're like, Donna, I heard you say this on the podcast, but I'm not quite clear, or I want to go further. definitely feel free to reach out to me, donna.sirianni@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to point you one last time to my website because that's where I've got these tools that you can download, donnasirianni.com. Just look at the resources tab. So anyway, I want to thank you for listening to this series. I hope this was helpful to you and I wish you the best of luck. Have a great day.